The Albatross by Scott Lauder.
If I am cursed, then he is lucky. If I were you, I wouldn't do that, said Lieutenant Mundy. Two blazing green eyes turned and stared at the gun that was now pointing straight at them. "Drop it," Lieutenant Mundy said in a low voice. "Now!" Slowly, Carlos brought the pillow away from the old man's face. When the pillow was past the edge of the bed, he released it. It fell from his hands and landed with a soft thud beside the bouquet of flowers that already lay on the ground. "Step away from him, nice and slow." Carlos, eyes still fixed on the gun, moved a few feet away from the bed in which Levi lay. As he did so, he cast a glance at the window on the wall of the other side of the bed. Lieutenant Mundy smiled. "I won't stop you," he said, "although I should remind you that we are 6 floors up. Now get on your knees and put your hands on your head. Now!" Carlos's body became as tense as a spring, but Lieutenant Mundy could read his thoughts. This man with green wolf-like eyes was calculating his chances of attacking him and getting the gun. "If you're a gambling man," said Lieutenant Mundy calmly, "then go ahead and try." Reluctantly, Carlos dropped to one knee and then 2. He raised his hands and placed them on top of his head. "Cross your legs behind you," ordered Lieutenant Mundy. "Do it!" With his gun pointed steadily at Carlos, Lieutenant Mundy reached for the handcuffs that he always carried in his belt. As he did so, 3 hospital security officers burst through the door behind him. Within moments, Carlos was securely handcuffed and lying flat on the ground. The 3 security officers were standing over him, waiting for the reinforcements that Lieutenant Mundy had called for. While Lieutenant Mundy was reading Carlos his rights, Dr. Afreen came running into the room, followed by Molly. She ran to her father and hugged him tightly. "Is he okay? Did he hurt him?" asked Dr. Afreen, checking the machines around her patient and feeling for his pulse. But before anyone could answer her, Carlos began laughing. He was laughing so hard that he could hardly breathe. "Hurt him? Twice," he coughed. "I have tried to kill him twice." He was laughing so hard he curled into a ball. If I am cursed, then he is lucky." "Let's hope he finds jail just as funny," Lieutenant Mundy said. My wife's name was Karis. A week after Carlos had tried to kill Levi for the 2nd time, Levi Andreas woke up. Dr. Afreen immediately called Haven Police Department. As soon as he heard that the old man was well enough to be interviewed, Molly's father called his daughter, and together they went back to the hospital. "I'd like to ask him a few questions. Is that okay?" said Molly's father. They were on the 6th floor again, and Dr. Afreen had met them outside Levi's room as soon as they had arrived. "Sure," said Dr. Afreen. "He's just finished eating, so let's go in." Inside, the old man was lying in bed. He turned his head toward them as they came in. "Mr. Andreas, this is Lieutenant Mundy of Haven Harbor Police, and this is his daughter Molly," said Dr. Afreen. "They'd like to speak to you for a little while. Is that all right?" The old man's eyes looked empty for a moment. Though his gray hair was neatly brushed, he looked very tired. His face was thin, and his lips were dry. Finally, he nodded his head. Yes, that's fine," he said. his voice not more than a whisper. "Hello, Mr. Andreas," said Molly's father. "How are you?" The old man smiled. "I'm still here," he said quietly. Molly's father smiled too. "Sir, what's the last thing you remember about the albatross?" "The albatross?" said the old man. He swallowed. Molly stepped forward and began pouring some water from the jug at the side of his bed into a glass. "Do you remember the albatross?" asked her father. The old man shook his head very slightly. Molly gave him the glass. He drank and thanked Molly with a nod. "I don't remember," said the old man. "I don't remember anything." "Do you remember Carlos, the captain, Andre?" asked her father. The old man shook his head. "Don't worry, Mr. Andreas," said the doctor, replacing her chart. "Sometimes it can take a little while for your memory to return fully." Molly was looking at her father. He understood her unspoken question, and he nodded. Molly took the watch out of her pocket. Its hands were still stuck at 1:38. She handed it to the old man, who took it hesitantly. "To my darling Leveros, Levi Andreas," he said, reading the inscription and translating it into English. "All my love, K." From outside, the sound of an approaching ambulance filled the air. It grew closer and closer to the hospital until the siren stopped suddenly. Doors slammed and urgent voices called out. Something else was happening. Molly could see that the old man's lip had begun to tremble. Slowly, his face was changing, becoming less confused, less uncertain. When he finally spoke, tears clouded his eyes. "Karis," he said. "My wife's name was Karis." Eventually, we feel grateful. They were sitting in Levi's hospital room. Molly was on the chair and Levi on the bed with his legs swinging below him. They were waiting for one of the assistants to bring a wheelchair to take Levi to the hospital's front door. Finally, after nearly a month of treatment, today was Levi's last day in the hospital. He was happier than Molly had ever seen him. "I'm fine. I can walk to the door," Levi had objected, but the head nurse wasn't listening. "Rules are rules," she said. From outside the window, a beam of sunlight fell into the room and lay across Levi's shoulders and chest. He was dressed in a new dark blue shirt and a pair of jeans. "Crazy," said Levi, smiling. "I'm fit now. I don't need a wheelchair," he said again. Molly nodded. She had to admit the rule about wheelchairs did seem strange. Was this really the same man that she had seen on the beach just a few weeks ago? "No running when we get outside, okay?" said Molly. Levi laughed. "Yes, miss," he replied, his brown eyes twinkling. They sat in silence for a few moments, each thinking their own thoughts. Molly knew she was going to miss him. She had visited Levi on all the 26 days he had been in the hospital, except one. When the soccer team bus broke down 2 weeks ago, on the journey back from a match in upstate New York, she had called him instead. "Do you still miss her?" Levi asked suddenly. They had talked about lots of things. Levi's hometown of Nikiti and its view of the Aegean Sea, Levi's house, Molly's father, her soccer team, her coach's tactics, and her friends. But it was Molly's mother and Levi's wife that they had discussed the least. Molly didn't need to ask who her was. She nodded. "How old were you?" he asked. "Almost 14, Molly replied. "She died 2 days before my birthday." "It's not easy. Grief, I mean. At first, it is impossible. You understand?" Molly nodded again. "But slowly. The good things, the things that you loved about that person, fill the emptiness. Eventually, we feel—" He stopped, trying to search for the best word. "Grateful?" Molly offered. "Yes, grateful. That's exactly right, Molly. We feel it because we have known that person. You see, everything ends, Molly. But the trick is to appreciate the things we have when we have them." "Did you always feel like that?" Molly asked. "I mean, grateful for Karis?" Levi laughed. "It took me a long time to understand. Too long. Some people understand it immediately. With others, it takes longer." Molly thought about her father. She wondered if he would ever feel the same as Levi did, as she did. "But listen," said Levi, his face breaking into a smile again. "Let's not be sad. We are here. We are healthy, and we have friends and family." "Hello, you two," said Dr. Afreen, coming into the room. Levi turned around. "Doctor, welcome. Molly and I were just chatting." Dr. Afreen smiled. "Some things never change," she said, and gave Molly a wink. "You are going to wear your lungs out, Mr. Andreas." Levi laughed. "Don't worry, Doctor. They are still strong." Dr. Afreen smiled and signed the chart that lay hanging at the bottom of the bed. "So, back to Greece?" she asked, pushing a strand of her long dark hair from her face. "Yes, back home," replied Levi. "I have a brother in Nikiti, nieces and nephews, and a house that I want to buy. My brother and I have a little boat. We'll fish. We'll sell our catch. You must come, Doctor. You and Molly." Before Dr. Afreen could answer, the assistant came into the room, pushing a wheelchair. "Ah," said Dr. Afreen, "your transport has arrived." Levi shook his head and sat down in it. Dr. Afreen shook Levi's hand. "It's been a pleasure knowing you, Mr. Andreas. I wish you all the best. Perhaps I'll make it to Nikiti one of these days. Who knows?" It's been a long time. "So, what did you think of the show?" asked Molly's father. They were standing in Times Square in New York City, next to a hot dog stand. Molly nodded and chewed for a second, her mouth full of hot dog, pickles, and mustard. She swallowed. "It was awesome," she said. "Thanks, Dad. It was the best birthday present ever." They had just been to see a show on Broadway. It was a surprise birthday treat for Molly. Her father had given her the tickets that morning. What a way to celebrate her 17th birthday. They walked up Broadway and toward Columbus Circle. They both noticed a Greek flag hanging up outside a restaurant. Molly stared as they went past. Her father looked too. They said nothing, but each one remembered that day a year ago. "You look tired," said her father eventually. "You want to take a cab?" Molly nodded. They stopped and faced the oncoming traffic. "How's Levi?" asked her father, raising his arm and watching 3 yellow cabs rush past. Levi had returned to the United States to be a witness in the trial of the captain and the crew of the Albatross. After the sentences were passed and the crew was put in prison, he had come to Haven and spent a few days there with them. Molly and he had continued to keep in contact with emails and cards. "He's good," replied Molly. "He and his brother have just bought a larger boat. They called it—" "Molly?" asked her father, eyes on the traffic. Molly smiled. "Karis," she said. Just then, a yellow cab turned sharply and pulled up beside them. "Riverside Drive, West 91st, said her father through the open window. The cab driver nodded. Molly and her father climbed in, and the cab pulled quickly into the traffic again. They were on their way to Molly's grandparents' apartment. For the first time since her mother had died, 3 years ago now, she and her father were going to stay with them. Molly looked at her father's face. She decided that he looked tired, perhaps even a little tense. She knew it was painful for her father going back to the grandparents' apartment, remembering her mother. But it was good to remember her, and she never forgot Levi's advice. Be grateful. Molly took her father's hand and squeezed it. Her father turned to her, smiling. "What was that for?" he asked. "Thanks," Molly simply said. "Thanks for everything, Dad." The cab stopped and her father paid. "Have a good evening, guys," said the taxi driver, smiling. Outside, arm in arm, Molly and her father paused in front of the tall apartment block. "It's been a long time," said her father, looking up. Molly looked up too. On and on, shining out like stars, the lights from 1,000 different rooms rose in front of them. Her father took a deep breath. Molly smiled at him, and together they stepped forward.